Lisa Chen stood nervously at the entrance of the Pine Valley shooting range, clutching her worn leather purse and second-hand ear protection. The weight of the moment pressed down on her shoulders as she took a deep breath and pushed open the wire, heavy glass door. The smell of gunpowder and gun oil hit her immediately, unfamiliar yet somehow comforting. At 36, with tired eyes and rough hands from working 2 jobs, she looked nothing like the other people there. Most were men in tactical gear, standing tall with an easy confidence that came from belonging. Lisa felt like an outsider in her simple jeans and faded blue sweater, the same one she wore to her office job at the insurance company. She approached the front desk slowly, feeling the weight of several side glances that quickly dismissed her. The men inside barely looked her way as she waited at the counter, their attention focused on a noisy group at the far end of the range. They were all gathered around a tall man wearing a vest covered in colorful patches from gun companies and shooting competitions. The young man behind the counter was watching them too, a look of admiration on his face. Lisa had to clear her throat, twice before he finally turned to her. "Oh, sorry about that," he said, not sounding particularly sorry. "Just watching history in action. That's Rick Thompson over there, national champion 3 years running. He practices here every Thursday." Lisa nodded politely and gave a small smile. "That's nice, I'm just here to learn the basics." Shooting competitions were completely foreign to her world. Her reasons for being here were much more practical. 3 nights ago, someone had broken into the apartment below hers. The sound of breaking glass had woken her up at 2 a.m., and she'd spent the rest of the night sitting against her bedroom door, holding a kitchen knife, terrified that the intruder might come upstairs. "I need to fill out some paperwork?" she asked, her voice soft but determined. "Yeah, here's the form." The young man slid a clipboard across the counter. "First-time shooter?" Lisa nodded as she began filling out her information. "Yes, after what happened in my building this week, I figured it was time to learn how to protect myself and my 14-year-old daughter Lily." The attendant's eyes had already drifted back to the champions group. "Right, yeah, safety first and all that." As she wrote down her address and phone number, Lisa couldn't help overhearing bits of conversation from the champions group. They were using words she'd never heard before, talking about trigger pull weights, sight radius, and something called grouping patterns. One man was boasting about a custom spring that had improved his shooting speed by milliseconds. Every few minutes, laughter would erupt from their circle, the easy, comfortable laughter of people who knew they belonged. Lisa felt a knot form in her stomach. She'd come alone because she couldn't afford to miss another day of work, and her friend who'd offered to come had canceled at the last minute. Now, surrounded by experts, she wondered if this had been a mistake. "Sign here and here," the attendant said, pointing to the bottom of the form, "and initial these safety waivers." As Lisa signed her name, she thought about the years she'd spent raising Lily on her own. She'd learned to fix leaky faucets, change flat tires, and negotiate better rates on everything from car insurance to cell phone plans. She'd faced down angry bosses and stood up to Lily's math teacher when he'd suggested her daughter wasn't naturally inclined toward numbers. She could certainly learn to handle a gun. When she finished the paperwork, a different man approached, older, with a gray mustache and a badge that said range officer. He looked Lisa up and down with a quick, assessing glance. "First-timer?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," Lisa replied, straightening her posture slightly. The range officer sighed as if this was going to be a burden. "All right, the basics then. Always keep the gun pointed downrange. Never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Always wear your ear and eye protection." As he spoke, his eyes kept drifting toward the champion's lane, where Rick Thompson was preparing for another round of shooting. The range officer's explanation became faster, more automatic, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized but wasn't particularly interested in. "This is how you load the magazine," he continued, demonstrating quickly. "This is the safety. Red means it's ready to fire. Questions?" Lisa had several questions, but sensed that asking them would only annoy him further. "No, I think I understand." "Good." He handed her a basic rental pistol, black, boxy, and heavier than she expected. "Lane 7 is open," he said dismissively, already turning away. "Try not to disturb the serious shooters." Lisa watched him walk toward Rick Thompson's lane, where he immediately brightened and began engaging in animated conversation with the champion. She stood alone, holding the unfamiliar weight of the gun, feeling both determined and completely out of place. "Lane 7, she whispered to herself, adjusting her grip on the pistol and walking toward her assigned spot. She could do this. She had to do this. For Lily. For herself. What no one at the range knew, what no one in Lisa's current life knew, was that she had a hidden past. 15 years earlier, she had been Lisa Wu, junior shooting champion from a small town in Colorado. The secret felt strange to carry after so many years of never mentioning it to anyone, not even to her closest friends at the insurance office where she processed claims 5 days a week. Lisa set her purse down at lane 7 and pulled out a small photo, worn at the edges from being handled too many times. She glanced at it quickly. A much younger version of herself holding a trophy almost as big as her torso, standing beside an elderly man with kind eyes and a proud smile. Her grandfather, Tom Wu, had been her hero and her coach. "Keep your stance, wide little dragon," he used to tell her. "Your feet are your foundation." Grandpa Tom had served 26 years in the Army, retiring as a master sergeant and renowned marksman. When Lisa showed interest in target shooting at age 12, he had been overjoyed. Every weekend he would take her to the local range, teaching her everything he knew about breathing control, trigger discipline, and mental focus. By 17, Lisa had won 3 state championships and was ranked 5th nationally in the junior division. Scouts from Olympic development programs had started showing up at her competitions, whispering about her natural talent and perfect form. Her future seemed set. College scholarships, international competitions, maybe even the Olympics one day. Then life happened, as Grandpa Tom would say. At 21, just as she was preparing for her biggest competition yet, Lisa discovered she was pregnant. The relationship with Lily's father had been brief, a fellow competitor who disappeared from her life as soon as she told him about the baby. Her dreams of competitive shooting faded quickly as more pressing concerns took over. Doctor appointments, prenatal vitamins, and planning for a future that looked nothing like she had imagined. Grandpa Tom never showed an ounce of disappointment. "Life gives us different targets to aim for," he told her, helping her pack for her move to the city where job opportunities were better for a single mom. Before she left, he presented her with a gift, a custom pistol he had specially built, for her, engraved with her initials and a small dragon. "For when you're ready to come back to it," he had said. For years, that pistol remained locked in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, untouched and almost forgotten, as Lisa built a life centered around Lily. Rent payments, parent-teacher conferences, and picking up extra shifts became her new normal. The trophies and medals were packed away in a storage unit across town. Then Grandpa Tom passed away 3 years ago. Lisa and Lily had driven back to Colorado for the funeral, and she had been surprised by how many old shooting friends had shown up to pay their respects. Some still competed, others had moved on like she had. They shared stories about the old days, about her grandfather's legendary patience and sharp eye. "He never stopped talking about you," one of her grandfather's friends had told her. "Kept newspaper clippings of all your wins in his wallet until the day he died." After the funeral, something had shifted inside Lisa. She started thinking about the pistol in the safety deposit box, about the person she used to be. Still, she did nothing about it until 3 days ago, when the break-in downstairs had left her feeling vulnerable and afraid. Yesterday, for the first time in 14 years, Lisa had opened that safety deposit box and held her grandfather's gift in her hands. The metal was cold at first, but warmed quickly to her touch as if welcoming her back. She didn't bring it to the range today. She needed to practice first to see if any of her old skills remained. But just knowing it existed again in her life had given her the courage to walk through those doors. Now, as she put the photo away and picked up the rental pistol, something strange happened. Her body seemed to remember what her mind had forgotten. Her feet automatically spread to shoulder width, creating a solid base. Her shoulders squared naturally, and her arms extended, with a confidence that surprised her. "Basic stance looks good," a voice said from behind her. Lisa turned to see an older woman in a range officer uniform watching her with a hint of approval. This wasn't the same officer who had given her the perfunctory safety briefing. "Thanks," Lisa said, a bit startled by the comment. "I watched some videos online." The woman nodded, though she looked slightly skeptical. "Well, whatever you watched, it stuck. Most first-timers look like they're trying to take a selfie with the gun." She smiled briefly. "I'm Helen. Let me know if you need anything." As Helen walked away to check on another shooter, Lisa turned back to face her target. She loaded the magazine just as she'd been shown, inserted it into the pistol, and chambered a round. The familiar click brought back a flood of memories. Early mornings at the range with Grandpa Tom, the smell of his coffee, the patient rumble of his voice. "Breathe in, breathe out halfway, then squeeze," she whispered to herself, hearing his instructions echo across 15 years. "Don't pull, just squeeze." Lisa raised the pistol, aligned the sights, and felt something inside her awaken. A part of herself she thought was gone forever. Her finger rested gently against the trigger as she took a deep breath, let half of it out, and held steady. From the corner of her eye, she could see the champion shooter demonstrating something to his admiring crowd, his movements theatrical and confident. Lane 7, where she stood, might as well have been invisible to them all. That was about to change. Lisa squeezed the trigger gently, the way Grandpa Tom had taught her all those years ago. The gun fired with a loud crack that echoed through the range, even through her ear protection. The recoil pushed against her hands, but her grip remained firm. For a moment, she couldn't see where the bullet had hit. Then, as the paper target stopped swaying, she noticed a hole, dead center in the bullseye. A perfect shot. Lisa blinked in surprise. Maybe it was just luck? After 15 years, there was no way she could still be that accurate. She adjusted her stance slightly and fired again. Another perfect hit, just millimeters away from the first hole. A strange feeling washed over her, like finding an old favorite sweater in the back of the closet and discovering it still fit perfectly. Her body remembered what her mind had nearly forgotten: the way to control her breathing, how to align, the sights, the perfect amount of pressure needed on the trigger. She fired a third time, another bullseye, forming a tight triangle with the first two shots. By her fourth shot, Lisa noticed a man at the lane next to hers glancing over. He was an older gentleman with gray hair peeking out from under his cap. He nodded at her with a hint of respect before returning to his own target. Lisa continued, focusing only on her breathing and the target in front of her. Fifth shot, sixth shot, seventh, each one hitting within the center circle. The world around her seemed to fade away as she entered that familiar zone of concentration she hadn't experienced since she was 21. She was so focused that she didn't notice the growing quiet around her. Several of the casual shooters had paused to watch. Even Helen, the range officer who had complimented her stance earlier, was standing a few lanes down, arms crossed, watching with raised eyebrows. When Lisa's first magazine was empty, she carefully set the pistol down on the counter, pointing downrange as instructed. Only then did she become aware of the attention she had attracted. A small group had formed behind her lane. She could hear whispers. "Did you see that grouping? Who is she?" "Has to be a pro." The older gentleman in the next lane leaned over. "Nice shooting," he said with a genuine smile. "You've done this before, I take it?" "A long time ago," Lisa replied, feeling her cheeks grow warm. She wasn't used to being the center of attention anymore. "Like riding a bike, isn't it?" he said. "Some things your body just doesn't forget." Lisa smiled back, feeling a small spark of pride that she hadn't experienced in years. "I guess not." As she reached for her second magazine to reload, she noticed that even some of Rick Thompson's entourage had turned to look in her direction. The champion himself was still focused on his own shooting, but a few of his friends were whispering and pointing toward Lane 7. One of them, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard, broke away from the group and walked over. He wore an expensive-looking jacket with logos from gun manufacturers, obviously a sponsored shooter himself. Lisa felt suddenly self-conscious in her plain clothes as he approached. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. "Would you mind if I take a look at your target?" Lisa hesitated, not sure what to say. "I'm still practicing," she replied. "I can see that," he said with a slight smile. "That's why I'd like to look. That's some impressive grouping from this distance." Helen, the range officer, was now standing nearby. "Go ahead and press the button to bring your target forward, hun," she suggested. "Let's see what you've done." Lisa pressed the button on the control panel, and the mechanical system whirred as it carried her paper target toward them. As it came closer, the tight cluster of holes in the center became clearly visible to everyone watching. 7 shots, all within a circle the size of a quarter. The tall man whistled softly. "That's competition-level accuracy," he said, studying the target, "and with a rental gun, no less." He turned to Lisa with newfound interest. "Have you competed before?" Before Lisa could answer, a voice cut through the growing crowd. "What's everyone looking at over there?" The voice belonged to Rick Thompson, the champion. He hadn't joined the gathering yet, but he had noticed that his audience had dwindled as more people moved to watch Lisa. "Lane 7's got some skills," someone called back. Now Rick set his pistol down and walked over, his confident stride parting the small crowd that had formed. He was taller than Lisa had realized, with broad shoulders and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's see what all the fuss is about," he said as he approached. Lisa felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. She hadn't come here for this kind of attention. She just wanted to practice, to reconnect with a small piece of her past. Now the national champion was walking toward her lane, and a dozen pairs of eyes were watching her. Rick examined her target with professional scrutiny, his expression changing from mild curiosity to genuine surprise. "That's—" he started, then paused, looking at Lisa more carefully. "That's not beginner's work." "I never said I was a beginner," Lisa replied quietly. "I just haven't done this in a very long time." Rick's eyes narrowed slightly, like he was trying to place her face. "Have we met before? At a competition, maybe?" Lisa shook her head. "I doubt it. I stopped competing 15 years ago." 15 years? Rick looked between Lisa and the target again. "And you can still shoot like this?" Helen stepped forward. "Why don't you show us a full magazine, Lisa? I think we'd all like to see if those first 7 shots were a fluke," the crowd murmured in agreement. Lisa felt her heart racing. Part of her wanted to politely decline, to finish her practice in privacy and go home to Lily. But another part, the part that remembered the thrill of competition, the joy of excellence, made her reach for the second magazine. "One more magazine," she agreed, loading the pistol with steady hands. "Then I really need to get back to my regular life." As she turned to face the target again, the entire range had gone silent, all eyes fixed on Lane 7, on the single mom who had walked in, nervous and invisible, but now commanded the attention of everyone, including the champion himself. Word traveled fast through the Pine Valley shooting range. The quiet woman in Lane 7, dressed in ordinary clothes with no fancy gear, had outshot everyone present, including Rick Thompson, the national champion, with nothing more than a basic rental pistol and 15 years of rust on her skills. After Lisa's second magazine, all 13 shots forming a group tight enough to cover with a golf ball, whispers turned into open conversation. People were using their phones to take pictures of her target. A teenager in a range polo shirt was quickly typing something on his phone, probably posting about what he'd just witnessed. Rick Thompson stood with his arms crossed, studying Lisa with a mixture of disbelief and professional curiosity. The champion was not used to being upstaged, especially not at his regular practice range, and certainly not by someone who claimed to have been out of the sport for over a decade. "You've got a name?" he asked finally. "Lisa Chen," she replied, feeling oddly formal as she said it. Rick's expression suddenly changed from curiosity to recognition. "Wait a minute," he said, his eyes widening slightly. Lisa Wu, junior national finalist 2009, Colorado State champion 3 years running? Lisa felt a jolt of surprise. I go by Chen now, she corrected, wondering how he could possibly remember her. But yes, that was me. Rick let out a low whistle and turned to his friends. Guys, do you have any idea who this is? This is Lisa Wu. She was breaking records before most of you even picked up a gun. The older gentleman who had been shooting in the lane next to Lisa stepped forward. I thought you looked familiar, he said with a warm smile. You're Tom Wu's granddaughter, aren't you? I met him at the Western Regional Championship years ago. Heck of a shooter, heck of a man. Lisa nodded, touched that someone remembered her grandfather. Yes, he taught me everything I know. Rick was now explaining to his entourage. She held the junior distance record before she disappeared from the circuit. Her grouping technique was practically textbook. I actually studied videos of her competitions when I was starting out. Lisa felt her cheeks warming. She hadn't heard her maiden name spoken aloud in public for years, much less had someone recite her accomplishments. It was like stepping through a time portal to a different life. That was a lifetime ago, she said quietly. I'm just Lisa Chen now. I work at Pacific Insurance handling claims. Helen, the range officer, had been listening nearby. Insurance claims during the week, bullseye destruction on the weekends? She asked with a grin. Sounds like a superhero's secret identity to me. A few people laughed, and Lisa found herself smiling despite her embarrassment. It felt strangely good to be recognized for something other than being Lily's mom or the woman who processed paperwork in cubicle B12. Rick stepped closer, examining her rental pistol. You're doing this with range equipment, seriously? Not even your own gun? I haven't fired a gun in 15 years, Lisa explained. My old one is still in a safety deposit box. One of Rick's friends, a woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes, spoke up. So what happened? Why'd you leave the circuit? You were on track for the Olympic development team, weren't you? Lisa hesitated, not sure how much of her personal life she wanted to share with this room of strangers. Life happened, she said simply. I became a mom, and my priorities changed. The woman nodded understandingly. Fair enough. Rick was still looking at her with that competitive gleam in his eyes. Well, Lisa Chen, he said, stressing her current name with respect, since you've already completely disrupted my practice session, how about a friendly competition? 20 rounds, standard targets, winner buys coffee afterward. The challenge hung in the air between them. For a moment, Lisa was transported back to her competition days. The adrenaline, the focus, the pure joy of excellence. But reality quickly reasserted itself. She had to pick up Lily from her friend's house in an hour, then head to her evening job at the call center. Bills were due next week and her car needed new tires before winter. I'm just here to brush up on basics, she said, looking at her watch. I really should be going soon. Rick raised an eyebrow. Afraid you can't replicate that performance, he asked, though his tone was more curious than mocking. Before Lisa could answer, the range owner appeared. He was a stout man with a thick mustache who had apparently been watching from his office. If it is Lisa Wu, I'd pay to see this match myself, he said, then addressed the growing crowd. In fact, let's make it interesting. $10 entry fee from anyone who wants to watch. Winner takes the pot. Several people immediately reached for their wallets. Whoa, wait, Lisa protested, holding up her hands. I didn't come here for a competition. Think of it as a way to help with those new tires you probably need, Helen suggested quietly from beside her. At Lisa's surprised look, Helen shrugged. Your car's parked out front. Those treads are pretty worn. Lisa bit her lip, considering. The money would be helpful, and there was something tempting about the opportunity to step back into her old world just for an hour. But she was rusty, and Rick was a national champion. What if she embarrassed herself? As if reading her thoughts, Rick said, Look, no pressure. Whether you win or lose, I'd love to talk shop afterward. Not every day I meet someone who can outshoot me with a rental. I haven't competed in 15 years, Lisa reminded him, but she could feel her resistance weakening. Like riding a bike, the older gentleman reminded her. echoing his earlier words. Some things your body just doesn't forget. Lisa looked around at the expectant faces. In a strange way, she felt more seen in this moment than she had in years. Not as a single mom struggling to make ends meet, not as an insurance claims processor, but as Lisa Wu, shooting prodigy, granddaughter of Master Sergeant Tom Wu, a person of exceptional skill. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Lily.
Staying for dinner at Mia's. Her mom said it's okay, we'll be home by 8. It was like the universe was giving her permission. 20 rounds? She asked Rick, a small smile finally breaking through. Standard targets, he confirmed with a grin. And
I take my coffee with 2 sugars when you lose. A cheer went up from the crowd as Lisa nodded. One condition, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. I need a better gun than this rental, something that won't pull to the right. Rick laughed. Now she tells us the rental pulls right, he said to his friends, after shooting a perfect group with it. He turned to one of his entourage. Tom, let the lady use your Glock, the one with the compensator. And just like that, Lisa Chen, insurance processor, single mom, forgotten champion, found herself heading back to the firing line, about to face off against the best shooter in the country, with 24 people crowding behind to watch. Strangers were placing bets on her performance, and for the first time in 15 years, she felt that familiar pre-competition flutter in her stomach, equal parts nerves and exhilaration. This certainly wasn't how she had expected her Thursday afternoon to go. 2 hours later, Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she counted the money. $1,780 in cash, the entire pot from the impromptu competition that had drawn shooters from across town as word spread through text messages and social media. She had beaten Rick Thompson by 3 points in a match that came down to the final round. I still can't believe this, she whispered, carefully folding the bills and tucking them into her purse. It was more money than she made in 2 weeks, at the insurance company. The range had completely transformed during their competition. What started as a casual weekday afternoon turned into standing room only, with people pressed against the back wall and peering through the windows from outside. Someone had set up a phone to live stream the match, and by the end, even the most skeptical observers were cheering each time Lisa stepped up to shoot. Now, as promised, she sat across from Rick at the coffee shop next door. The crowd had mostly dispersed, though several people had asked for her autograph, something that made her laugh with its absurdity. Single moms who processed insurance claims didn't give autographs. You could have gone pro, Rick said, stirring 2 sugars into his coffee even though she was the one who had lost their bet. He insisted on paying anyway. You still could. Lisa smiled, warming her hands on her cup of tea. It's a nice thought. I'm serious, Rick said, leaning forward. Your technique is still there. Your focus is incredible. With a little training to get back in competition shape, you could be placing in major tournaments within 6 months. I have a daughter, Lisa reminded him. I have jobs, bills, real life. Rick nodded thoughtfully. How old is your daughter, now? 14. Her name is Lily. Bring her along, Rick suggested. The junior women's division needs role models like you. Girls that age need to see women excel in sports dominated by men. Lisa hadn't thought about it that way. Lily had never seen her mother compete, had never known that part of her life at all. What would her daughter think if she saw Lisa the way these strangers had seen her today? Confident, skilled, special? And as for jobs, Rick gestured to his sponsor-laden vest. This is mine now. It pays well. Better than most office. Jobs, that's for sure. Lisa raised an eyebrow. I'm 45 years too old to start over as a professional shooter. Nonsense, said a voice from behind her. It was Helen, the range officer, joining them with her own cup of coffee. The women's champion last year was 48, started competing at 41 after her kids left for college. The sport has changed since you left, Rick added. There's more money, more visibility. And frankly, there's a huge opportunity for someone with your story. The comeback kid, or comeback mom, I should say. Lisa took a sip of her tea, considering his words. The money in her purse felt like a tangible promise of possibility. What could she do with an extra $2,000 a month? She could quit the evening call center job. Spend more time with Lily. Maybe even start saving for her daughter's college fund instead of just scraping by month to month. It's not that simple, she said finally. Nothing worth doing ever is, Helen replied. But I saw you out there today. You weren't just good, you were happy. When was the last time your insurance job made you feel like that? Lisa couldn't remember. The rush of the competition, the focus, the feeling of excellence. These weren't things she experienced in her cubicle. Even the small victories of her daily life, important as they were, didn't light her up the way shooting had done today. Think about it, Rick said, sliding a business card across the table. My sponsor is always looking for new talent, especially with a compelling story. Being good isn't enough anymore. You need to connect with fans. And a single mom returning to glory after 15 years, people would eat that up. Lisa took the card, turning it over in her fingers. I don't know the first thing about sponsorships or professional competition these days. That's what coaches are for, Rick said with a smile. And as it happens, I know a guy. They talked for another hour, with Rick explaining how the circuit worked now, how social media had changed the game, how many more women were competing than when Lisa had left the sport. Helen shared stories about older shooters who had found success later in life. For the first time in years, Lisa allowed herself to imagine a different kind of future. By the time she drove home, her mind was spinning with possibilities. The money from today's competition would pay for those new tires she needed and leave enough to catch up on the electric bill. But what if this was just the beginning? When she unlocked the door to their small apartment, Lily was sitting on the couch with her homework spread around her. Hey, Mom, she said without looking up. How was your day? Mia's mom says hi. Lisa set her purse down, wondering how to even begin explaining what had happened. It was interesting. I went to the shooting range. That got Lily's attention. Her daughter looked up with surprise. The shooting range? Why? I used to shoot competitively, Lisa said, realizing she had never shared this part of her life with her daughter. Before you were born, I was actually pretty good. Lily's expression was skeptical. You? Like, with guns? Lisa laughed. Yes, me. With guns. In fact, she pulled out her phone and showed Lily a picture someone had taken of the final scoreboard, with El Chen in first place, one spot above the national champion. Lily's eyes widened. Wait, is that the Rick Thompson? The guy on those commercials for tactical gear? You beat him? I did, Lisa said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. And he wants me to consider competing again, professionally. Are you going to do it? Lily asked, suddenly interested. I don't know. It would be a big change. Lily thought for a moment. Well, it's got to be more interesting than insurance claims. Lisa laughed. That's setting the bar pretty low. She sat beside her daughter on the couch, feeling a strange, new energy in her body. Today had awakened something she thought was gone forever. Not just her shooting skills, but a sense of possibility. Of excellence, of being more than just someone who paid bills and made it through each day. 1 week later, Lisa returned to the range with Lily beside her, nervous and excited to show her daughter this hidden part of herself. The range owner gave them a warm welcome, introducing Lily to some of the regulars who had witnessed her mother's triumph. Helen was there too, giving Lily a personal tour of the facility, while Lisa filled out paperwork. Not rental forms this time, but employment papers. The range had offered her a position as an instructor, better pay than the insurance company, with flexible hours that would work around Lily's school schedule and any future competitions. 3 months after being ignored at the entrance of Pine Valley Shooting Range, Lisa Chen signed her first sponsorship deal, with her daughter proudly at her side. The single mother who had once given up her passion for her family had found a way to embrace both, proving that sometimes life offers second chances when you least expect them, and sometimes they begin with a single perfect shot.